So refractive surgeries with glaucoma it's become a really subject of importance because we are doing so many of them. So laser-assisted refractive surgeries are being done in huge numbers. Its relationship with myopia and glaucoma is a common factor. It's common with both of them. High incidence of glaucoma in presbyopic age group is another factor because even presbyopia is now being dealt with lasers. The glaucoma numbers are increasing because aging population is increasing. And if we look back, we started this surgery long back. That means around say 1996, 7, 8. So the people who are 20 now are 45 and beyond now. So when we look at it a little more philosophically, every patient undergoing refractive surgery should be treated as glaucoma suspect. And therefore, glaucoma assessment is in refractive surgeries is as essential as the refractive workup. So we come straight to preoperative evaluation. If we look at it, the most important part is history of glaucoma. First degree relatives are more prone, we all know, but important it is to remember that siblings are more vulnerable than actually the parents or the children. They develop OHT at a much younger age, and so they develop glaucoma. IOP is the only modifiable risk factor, but after refractive surgery, this estimation becomes very difficult because this all goes haywire because of changed corneal parameters. And in people with family history, it's not a single reading, but multiple readings and their average. DVT, if there's a very strong family history, peaks and asymmetric IOPs, all of them are equally important. So now coming to myopia. If a patient is myopic of more than 6 diopters, his chances of glaucoma are the highest amongst all the group of myopes. Then they have tilted disc, they have PPAs, which interferes with the assessment of the disc. Imaging devices, because the discs are so large, it's not compatible with the imaging devices really in a way other discs are. And preoperative disc photos in this situation are a better tool. So stereo photographs and red-free pictures, they really are of a great value when they're done before the surgery is done on them. Now coming to another evaluation part of it, who are the higher risk? People who have a high vertical CDR, who have thinner corneas, Asians, Africans, other diseases, especially in young people, they are like pseudoexfoliation or pigmentary glaucoma. In presbyopes, hypermetropia, angle closure disease, previous glaucoma surgery, and more so if the blebs are thin and surgery has been done, then it's always a PRK or epiLASIK and not a really full LASIK. Visual fields are very important. First and foremost, mostly in most of the people, they're normal. But if there is any damage, it has to be established right before the surgery because this is something which can become worse following the surgery. And out of all other things, if the PSD is bigger, they're more prone to glaucoma. For disc imaging here, a disc photo, a red-free one is as good as OCT. So coming to intraoperative, the IOP rises anything from say 40 to 90. And if eye already has a glaucoma damage, it is most vulnerable, but most of the people are young. So evidence has not shown so far that there is an optic nerve damage following that. There are a few studies with GDX showing RNFL thinning, but GDX itself is based on the birefringes. So birefringes are altered after the refractive surgery. So their reliability is much lesser. Visual fields in normal don't deteriorate, but can deteriorate if the glaucoma is there. So coming to now post-operative. The biggest challenge in this is IOP underestimation. And this happens because of cornea becomes thinner, there is change in corneal curvature, there is instability of corneal flap. Removal of Bowman's layer in PRK also leads to weaker cornea. Then changes of this kind are more in myopes than hyperopes. And deeper the ablation, lower is the estimation. So underestimation, I'll talk a little bit more because it's so important. So if the preoperative IOP is higher, underestimation will be lower, and so for the deep ablation. A formula for calculating, we have still not found the gold word, but Kohlhaas algorithm is supposed to be most accepted. GAT is the gold standard for the whole world, but in this situation, it becomes slightly lesser gold. It becomes more silverish. A peripheral unablated cornea may be used, and for that, a tonopen, eye care, both are reasonably independent of cornea. They are good options. DCT is really good, but it's not something that most of us have in the clinics. We don't really have them. Then changes in viscoelastic properties of cornea. in this situation, we can use a ORA, and in this ORA, IOP-CC is definitely of more value than G, and Corvus ST can also be used. But then Corvus ST is also used on Schimpeck plug camera, and those images are also altered by the refractive surgeries. Corneal permeability is another bug. Cornea becomes thinner, so it is definitely more permeable than otherwise, but it lasts only for not more than 6 months' time. And the evidence shows that timolol has efficacy of timolol was not more right after surgery as it was later. So it's not really altered for timolol at least. And prostaglandins in these patients are only as effective as timolol is. So there is really no advantage, and there's no point aggravating herpetic stuff which may be sitting behind somewhere. So drugs used are normally CAI and timolol, and could be a fixed combination or could be used alone. Steroid responders are of extreme concern. Significant IOP rise is seen in primary open-angle glaucoma, glaucoma suspects, people with family history of suffering from POAG, diabetes mellitus, high myopia, previous episodes of steroid responsiveness, rheumatic disease, and age. And these people are the people who really cause havoc. So how does it clinically manifest? In some people, it's just a simple rise, clear cornea, and you treat it all right. But in some patients, they develop pressure-induced keratitis. The cornea becomes pretty cloudy. It's a pisc. Or when it stays for a little while longer, it can convert into IFS, especially in the early phase or if there is trauma. So what happens is there, stromal swelling, which causes corneal haze. It leads to fluid accumulation between the flap and the stroma. And GAT is not really a good instrument. So if there is a steroid response, we got to stop the steroids and we take the patients on the equosuppressants. This needs a little bit of more respect. So it occurs due to collection of fluid between flap and stroma. GAT measures IOP low due to cushion effect. Therefore, other tonometers are of more value. ASOC should be done to diagnose it because DLK and this can be confusing with each other and the treatments are opposite. If there is a DLK, in that case, we need to give steroids, but if it's a steroid response, we need to get off the steroids. So IFS responds to drug reduction in IOP. But there have been found cases of glaucoma progression just because of IFS. The IOP was measured low. Let's not forget something we called radial keratotomy. So this is a 46-year-old lady who came to us in 2018. She had undergone radial keratotomy in 1994. Both eyes that time had patent PI. She wanted urgent surgery, which we said is not required. So she pushed off somewhere and got one eye operated. And this is the way she came back to us. At that time, her IOP in two eyes was 130 and 32, and one eye had nuclear cataract left, other eye was done. There was a strong family history of glaucoma. Angle was open and gonio, and corneas were of 527 and 541, so they were normal corneas. Now she had a disc which was tilted, and there was some PPA, and the cupping in right eye was 0.9 and left eye 0.7 vertical large cup. Now, this patient had visual field defects, which were just commensurating with the optic disc. She underwent a phacotrabeculectomy with mitomycin C. Phaco was done temporal, and the TRAV was done on the superior nasal quadrant. Post-operatively, day 1, 4, 7, she had IOP first day 23, then 7 on 4th day, and on 7th day 14. Suddenly on 19th day, she came with blurring of vision, and her IOP was 40 at that time. It was immediately, the suppressant was given because the BLEV was there, BLEV was not gone, but it wouldn't respond so much. So after 6 weeks, we removed one releasable. After 8 weeks, another releasable. Then with Combigan, she stabilized at IOP of 15. Now, these patients have large cylindrical errors also. So ultimately, she is stable. She is operated in both the eyes. But patients, she must have been myope. That's why RK was done. And following RK, she had another steroid response. So no matter what refractive surgery one does, but one has to remember that the steroid response is the reality. So take home is that every patient who needs refractive surgery is a potential glaucoma suspect. Pre-op evaluation like a glaucoma patient, document imaging and noticing other than glaucoma changes in the disc, like myopia, challenges in IOP measurement due to decreased thickness, biomechanical properties, viscoelastic changes, PISC and IFS. Tonometers need to be chosen carefully. Steroid responders and response need constant watch. Diagnose early, treat appropriate, and regular follow-ups. Thank you so much.